But the agents didn't stop. They had checklists, maps, and files. Everyone was a possible suspect. Everyone was questioned. Back at the field, teams used drones to scan the woods. They marked every tree, every hill, every strange dip in the ground. Creeks were searched again, even the ones already cleared. Barns were opened. Attics climbed in too. Wells uncovered. Pickup trucks checked for hidden compartments. Still, nothing. No fingerprints, no tire tracks, no phone calls, no ransom. Notes. The agents kept a giant wall of photos, maps, and timelines. They drew red lines, moved sticky notes, added pins, but they weren't getting closer. The FBI believed the kids had been taken, together, fast, by someone who knew exactly what they were doing. But without one real clue, they couldn't prove anything. So they kept searching. And the people of Hillshade kept waiting. As the FBI kept searching with no solid leads. Someone in town pointed to a man named Hank. Hank was a drifter. Lived alone in a small shack about half a mile from where the bikes were found. No phone, no family. Just him, a broken-down truck, and a bunch of old tools. People said he gave them a weird feeling, that he stared too long, that he watched kids. From the tree line, agents visited Hank's place. They found a knife, a stained shirt, and scratches all over his arms. When asked where they came from, he said, "Raccoon got me." He had a criminal record, mostly petty theft, trespassing, but also one charge from years ago, attempted unlawful restraint. That was enough to bring him in. The town thought they had their guy. People even started sleeping better. But after hours of questioning, Hank didn't break. No confession. No timeline. No connection to the kids. His truck had no blood, no dirt. The knife? Rust, not blood. After 3 days, the FBI released him. He walked out silent, head down. And just like that, the town was back to square one. Hope cracked again. By the end of the second week, the town wasn't just scared anymore. It was broken. Some parents stopped speaking to each other. Marriages began to shake. Everyone was exhausted, angry, confused. Kyle's mom refused to leave the house. Megan's dad started blaming the police in interviews. Beth's parents got into loud arguments, right in front of reporters. People looked for answers in strange places. One mom brought in a psychic who claimed she felt cold air near the creek. Another hired a private investigator who charged thousands and found nothing. Some families stopped going to the search meetings. Others never missed one. They passed each other like strangers, all hurting, all searching, but now divided. One mother, every night, made her son's bed and left the light on, just in case. Another moved into her daughter's room. She said she could still smell her shampoo on the pillow. The town that had once searched together was now unraveling, and the silence from the woods? It was spreading. 41 years later, Hillshade is not the same town. The corner store where the kids used to buy gum is gone. So is the gas station. The school has new paint, but fewer students. Most of the kids who lived there in 1983 are now adults or have left. And the field? The one where the bikes were found? It's just weeds now? Overgrown. Fenced off. Forgotten. No one goes near it. People in Hillshade don't talk about the Texas 5 anymore. Not out loud. When the topic comes up, voices lower. Eyes shift. Like saying their names might wake something up. The case is still unsolved. No arrests. No bodies. No new leads. Over the years, search parties stopped. Reporters moved on. The flyers faded and fell off poles. And slowly, the town tried to bury what happened. But it never really left. It lived in the air. In the cracks of sidewalks. In the silence between neighbors. Hillshade had become a place full of ghosts. And one big question no one could answer. Where did those kids go? In March 2024, a massive storm hit Hillshade. Winds hit 80 miles per hour. Trees snapped. Roofs ripped off. Power lines sparked and fell. It was the worst storm the town had seen in years. In one neighborhood, an old oak tree fell in someone's backyard. The tree had been there forever. Thick, strong, with roots as deep as a car is long. But the storm yanked it straight out of the ground. The next morning, as cleanup crews moved through the streets, 73-year-old Carol Jenkins stood at her back window, staring at the mess. Branches were everywhere. Dirt was piled high where the roots had torn up the yard. But that's not what caught her attention. It was something small. Something shiny. Something buried deep in the dirt, now half exposed. It looked like metal. Carol thought maybe it was part of the old water line or a broken sprinkler. But she was wrong. That shiny object? It had been buried for over 4 decades. And now, thanks to the storm, it was ready to be found. Carol's 17-year-old grandson, Josh, came over that afternoon to help clean up the yard. He brought a shovel, some gloves, and a rake. At first, he worked on clearing branches. Then Carol pointed to the metal sticking out of the dirt. "Dig that up," she said. "See what it is." Josh knelt down and started clearing around it. As more dirt came off, the shape started to make sense. It was a box, maybe the size of a lunchbox, but heavier, rusted, covered in roots. It had been wrapped in some kind of thick, cracked plastic, like it was meant to be hidden. Josh tugged it loose and held it up. "You want me to open it?" he asked. Carol nodded. It took a few minutes, but eventually, the box creaked open. Inside was a plastic sandwich bag, yellowed with age. Inside there was a folded piece of paper and a black and white photograph. Josh handed them to Carol. She stared at the photo. Her hands began to shake. She didn't say a word. The photo was old, grainy, but clear enough. She recognized the faces, and her heart nearly stopped. In the photo, 5 kids stood in a line in front of a trailer. Their faces were pale, their eyes wide. They weren't smiling. They looked older, maybe 13, 14, 15. But Carol knew who they were. It was Tommy, Luis, Megan, Kyle, Beth, the Texas 5. They looked tired, dirty, but alive. Carol stared at the image for a long time. Her eyes filled with tears. "It's them," she whispered. Josh leaned in. "Are you sure?" Carol didn't answer. She just nodded. She unfolded the paper that came with the photo. It had faded writing. Only a few lines were still readable. It said, "We are not dead, but we were never really free." Carol's breath caught in her throat. She grabbed her phone and dialed 911. "I found something," she told the dispatcher, voice shaking. "You need to send someone. It's about the missing children. The ones from 1983. Within the hour, police were at her house. They took the box, the photo, the note, but no one could explain how it got there or who had buried it. The paper was fragile, yellowed, edges curled, but the message was clear enough to send a chill through the room. They never meant to hurt us, but we were never free." "Carol, read the line twice, then a third time." Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. She looked back at the photo. 5 kids, standing still, eyes wide, not tied up, not crying, but not okay. Something about their expressions. They looked stuck. Whoever wrote the note, it had to be one of them. Maybe Tommy, maybe Megan, someone who had lived it, someone who had survived it, and someone who wanted the truth to be found, even if it came out decades later. Carol grabbed her phone and called 911. "This is Carol Jenkins," she said, voice cracking. "I found a box buried under the tree. It has a picture and a message. It's about the missing children." She didn't give them every detail. She didn't have to. The moment she said, "Texas 5, the dispatcher went silent. Then replied, "We're sending someone right away." Carol sat down in her kitchen, the note still in her hand. Outside, the wind had stopped, but inside Hillshade, a storm was just beginning. The police arrived fast. They photographed everything. The hole, the tree, the dirt. The box was placed into a sealed evidence bag and handed off to forensics. No one said much, but everyone knew what this meant. This wasn't a prank. This wasn't fake. The photo was real. The note was real. And if they were real, then so were. The kids. News spread fast. Reporters returned. The case was reopened. And for the first time in 41 years, Hillshade wasn't wondering what happened anymore. It was asking, where are they now? And maybe even scarier, are they still alive? The photo found under Carol's tree was sent to a special lab. Experts scanned it. They looked at bone structure, eye shape, jawlines. They compared it to old school photos from 1983. The results came back fast, and they were shocking. It was them. Tommy, Megan, Louise, Kyle, Beth. No question. They were older in the picture. Maybe in their early teens, but still clearly the Texas 5. Even more chilling, one expert spotted a scar on Tommy's eyebrow. Same place, same shape as the one he got falling off his bike at age 10. And the shirt Megan was wearing? It matched. One reported missing from her house the day she disappeared. This meant something huge. The kids had been alive after the day they vanished. Not for minutes. Not for hours. For years. It changed everything. The story wasn't about 5 kids who vanished into thin air. Now it was about what happened to them after. The FBI reopened the case at full scale. A new task force was formed. Agents didn't just want to know where the kids had been. Now they needed to find out who had kept them hidden all this time. The next break came from the photo itself. In the background, behind the kids, was a trailer. A silver, beat-up mobile home. Just barely in frame, but one detail stood out. A license plate. It was dirty and only half visible, but still readable. I told my stories and only half visible, but still readable. Forensic team enhanced the image and ran the plate number through an old vehicle database. In 1983, 5 kids vanished from a small Texas town without a sound. No screams, no witnesses, no footprints. Just their bikes lying untouched in a field near the woods. The case went cold. Families broke. The town went silent. Then, in 2024, 41 years later, a storm ripped through that same town. A tree was torn from the ground. And buried beneath it was a rusted metal box. Inside was a photograph. 5 faces and a message that would blow the case wide open. Because the kids weren't just missing. They had been alive for years, and someone had been keeping them hidden, right in plain sight. It was a Saturday morning in 1883, in a quiet Texas town called Hillshade. The sun was already up. Birds were chirping. Sprinklers clicked on in front yards. It was the kind of morning where everything felt normal, safe, like nothing bad could ever happen. 5 kids were getting ready to ride their bikes to a nearby creek. It wasn't far, just about a mile away. They had gone there many times before. They were best friends. All neighbors. Tommy, the oldest, was 12. He was the one with the red bike and the quiet voice. Luis, 11, always wore his baseball cap backwards. Megan was 10, small and fast. Kyle and Beth were the youngest, both 9, always laughing and chasing each other. They all lived on the same street. Around 8:45 a.m., one by one, they rolled out of their driveways. Their tires crunched on gravel. Screen doors slammed behind them. One of the moms called out, "Be back before lunch." The kids shouted back, "We will." They pedaled down the road together, 5 bikes in a row. Just 5 friends heading out for a normal morning adventure. No one knew it would be the last time they were ever seen together. At exactly 9:14 a.m. A neighbor named Mrs. Hallie saw the kids ride past her front porch. She was watering her flowers and waved. Megan waved back. Tommy gave a little nod. The rest just rode past, laughing and talking. A few minutes later, they passed a small gas station on the edge of town. The man at the counter, Mr. Vance, remembered them too. He said they were loud, full of energy. Kyle bought a piece of gum. Louise asked for a cold soda, but didn't have enough money. Mr. Vance smiled and told them to be safe. He watched them disappear down the road toward the woods. That was it. Those 2 adults, Mrs. Hallie and Mr. Vance, would be the last people to ever see all 5 children together. They weren't scared. They weren't being chased. There was no sign of trouble. Just 5 kids on a bike ride. And then nothing. They never made it to the creek. They never came home. And by the time the town realized something was wrong, the kids were already gone. It was just after noon when a man, driving past the edge of the woods, noticed something strange. He saw 5 bicycles standing still in the tall grass, right where the trees began. No kids, no movement. He slowed down and got out of his truck. The bikes were all upright, like they'd been placed there. One still had the back wheel spinning. There were no backpacks, no shoes, no hats, nothing but the bikes. The man looked around, called out. Nothing. He drove straight to the sheriff's office. Within an hour, deputies were on the scene. They marked off the area with tape, took photos, called the families. By now it was nearly 1 p.m. The parents had just started to worry. Lunch had come and gone. No one had come home. When the police told them the bikes had been found, but not the kids, panic set in. Everyone rushed to the field. Mothers, fathers, neighbors. Some were yelling the kids' names. Others stood frozen, just staring at the empty bikes. It didn't make sense. There were no footprints, no drag marks, no broken branches, just 5 bikes in the grass. And silence. By 2 p.m. the search had begun. Police officers spread out into the woods. Parents walked in circles, shouting. Teenagers from the high school came to help. People brought flashlights, snacks, water bottles, anything they could carry. A birthday party was canceled so more people could help. The mayor showed up. So did the fire department. Everyone was looking for the kids. By 3 p.m. there were nearly 200 people searching. Helicopters flew overhead. Search dogs were brought in. They sniffed the bikes, then ran straight into the trees, but stopped just a few hundred feet and nothing. The sun kept climbing. The woods were quiet. Too quiet. One searcher said, "It's like they vanished into thin air." Another said, "There's no sign of a struggle. No clothing, no blood." Everyone kept asking the same question. Where did they go? But there was no answer. The woods weren't that big. The creek wasn't that far. And there was no way 5 kids could just disappear. But somehow, they did. And by sunset, the town of Hillshade was no longer quiet. It was afraid. The sun dipped lower, but the search didn't stop. Helicopters hovered above the treetops, blades thumping like a heartbeat. Deputies in orange vests shouted the kids' names through megaphones. Search dogs barked and pulled hard on their leashes, sniffing for any scent, but nothing. The dogs lost interest quickly, circling the same patch of dirt near the bikes and whining. The woods weren't giving up anything. No footprints, no candy. Wrappers, no torn clothes. No signs of a struggle. It was like the forest had swallowed the kids whole and covered its tracks. A group of volunteers checked the creek. It was shallow, barely knee-deep, with no strong currents. There was no way 5 kids could drown there, not without leaving something behind. One officer quietly asked another, How do 5 children vanish in daylight in a town this small? No one had an answer, but everyone felt it. Something wasn't right. In the woods, they were too quiet, too still, like they were hiding a secret. As night fell, flashlights flickered through the trees like fireflies. But the search slowed. People were exhausted. Some refused to leave. Back in town, porch lights glowed as reporters interviewed stunned parents. Mothers clutched school photos. Fathers stared blankly at the ground. The questions came fast. Did the kids run away? Was someone watching them? Why those 5? No one knew. By midnight, a strange stillness had settled over Hillshade. The streets were quiet, windows shut tight. Everyone waiting for something, a miracle, a body, an answer, but nothing came. People had always said nothing ever happened in Hillshade. Now, something had, and it had left a hole deep and wide. In the center of the town, the kind of hole no one knows how to fill, the kind that keeps growing. Every day the kids don't come home. By the next morning, Hillshade looked completely different. News vans lined the streets. Reporters set up cameras in driveways. Big satellite dishes pointed at the sky. It was chaos. The missing kids had become national news. Every channel showed the same pictures. 5 smiling faces from school yearbooks. At the bottom of the screen, bold letters read, "The Texas 5." Reporters asked questions like, how does this happen in a small town? And were they taken together or separately? Local police held a press conference outside the station. The sheriff, looking tired, spoke into the mic. "We're doing everything we can. Please stay calm." But the town wasn't calm. People were angry. People were scared. Traffic backed up for blocks. Outsiders came in to help and to stare. Stores sold out of bottled water, flashlights, even duct tape. It felt like the whole country had dropped into this one quiet town. Hillshade wasn't just a town anymore. It had become a story. By day 3, the parents stood in front of microphones. Some couldn't even speak. Others cried through every word. Megan's mom clutched her daughter's pink jacket and begged, "Please, if you have her, just bring her home. We don't care who you are. We just want our kids back." Tommy's dad was shaking. He looked straight into the camera. "They're good kids. They didn't run away. Someone knows something." Behind them, volunteers passed out flyers. Each one had 5 pictures, a reward offer, and a simple sentence. In big, bold letters, "Still missing." People taped them to stop signs, gas pumps, grocery store doors. Some parents drove hours away, handing out flyers to anyone who'd take one. Online, the story kept spreading. Hashtags, posts, TikToks, news interviews. Everyone was watching. Everyone had an opinion, but no one had answers. Not a single person stepped forward with real information. Not one solid tip. It was like the kids had fallen off the face of the earth. And for the families, every second felt heavier, longer. They just kept hoping someone would see a face, remember a van, recognize a voice. Anything. But the silence was louder than ever. When real answers didn't come, people started making up their own. By day 4, online, forums exploded with wild theories. One post claimed a man in a black truck had been following the kids all week. Another said a satanic cult had been hiding in the woods near Hillshade since the 70s. UFO believers joined in, saying there were strange lights seen above the town that same morning. Some locals said it had to be someone from Hillshade, someone who knew the area, who knew the kids. Others blamed the police, accusing them of hiding something. The theories spread fast, too fast. Every noise in the night became a clue. Every stranger became a suspect. People started locking their doors. In daylight, parents stopped letting kids play outside. Schools talked about canceling classes. Fear was growing. Not just in Hillshade. Everywhere. But behind the chaos, one thing was clear. Nobody actually knew what happened. And that truth was scarier than any theory. That week, the FBI took over the case. They brought in more agents, more dogs, and more equipment. They started knocking on every single door in Hillshade, every house, every trailer, every garage. People were polite at first, then tired, then angry. It was registered in Arkansas. The name on file, Janet Tate. Police looked into her. She had no criminal record, but her husband did, Randall Tate. They had owned the trailer in the late 1980s, around the same time the photo was likely taken. The trailer itself had been sold off in the 90s and later scrapped, but the address where it had once been parked? That was still on record. A small mobile home park in rural Arkansas. Agents drove out the next morning. They didn't expect much. Decades had passed. The place could have changed completely. But when they arrived, the road signs were still the same. The layout hadn't changed. Some trailers were gone. Others looked abandoned. Still, it was a place to start. And for the first time in years, they had a real location. They weren't chasing shadows anymore. The mobile home park looked like it. Hadn't seen much life in years. Weeds pushed through cracks in the pavement. Rusted trailers leaned sideways. A few had boards over the windows, but people still lived there. Mostly older folks who had stayed through the years. Agents went door to door, asking about Randall and Janet Tate. Most people didn't remember them. Too long ago. But one man did, a retired mechanic named Roy. He lived 3 trailers down. He remembered the Tates very well. They were strange, Roy said. Real quiet. Always kept the shades down. But what made Roy really pause was the kids. They had 5 of them, he said, always inside. Never saw them play. Never saw them talk to anyone. Roy described them as pale, thin, quiet. They weren't allowed to speak, he said. If they even looked at someone, Randall would pull them back inside. Another woman, Miss Janey, recalled hearing loud prayers at night. Long, shouting sermons coming from inside the trailer. But no one called the police. Why? They didn't seem hurt, she said. Just controlled. The trailer had been moved years ago. But now, agents knew. The Texas 5 had been here, and someone in that park had watched them and done nothing. Back at headquarters, the FBI pulled Randall Tate's file, and it got dark. Fast. Before 1982, Randall had been a preacher at a small church in Oklahoma. But something changed. He lost his job, claimed the world was ending, and started preaching about survival and purity. In 1982, he and his wife vanished off the grid. He began calling himself Brother Randall. Claimed children were being corrupted by modern society. Told people he was saving the chosen. Some of his old writings were recovered, filled with warnings about evil governments and cleansing the future. The scariest part? Randall believed kids could be reborn through obedience, through silence, through suffering. Agents now believed he took the 5 kids as part of this twisted mission, raised them in isolation, moved them from place to place, never let them speak. And his wife, Janet? She helped him. Together, they became ghosts. Never. FILED taxes. Never used banks. Moved every few years. Always rural. Always quiet. It explained why the kids were never found. They were being hidden by people who knew how to disappear. But if Randall and Janet had them, where did they go next? And the bigger question, were all 5 still alive? After learning about Randall Tate's past, the FBI began digging deeper. They uncovered land records showing that in 1986, Tate purchased a large, isolated piece of property in northern New Mexico, over 60 acres of dense forest and rocky hills. The land was listed under a fake name, but the handwriting on the documents matched his. He paid in cash. no mortgage, no bank trail. Police in that area had once tried to locate him after someone reported strange lights in the woods and heard what they called military-style drills. But when officers went to check, they found nothing, just trees, hills, and silence. By 1989, Randall Tate stopped paying property taxes. The address on file went dead. No neighbors ever saw the trailer leave. It just disappeared. And so did he. The FBI believes Tate packed up the camp and vanished. But where he went, no one knew. There were no phone records, no vehicle registrations, no credit cards, nothing. He had erased himself and his wife completely. But one thing remained clear. Wherever he had taken those kids, it was somewhere far from anyone, somewhere off the map. And if they were still alive, they were living like ghosts. Now that the photo was confirmed real, and Randall Tate's movements somewhat traced, the mission changed. The FBI wasn't just solving an old mystery anymore. They were trying to save people. Flyers were reprinted, this time with age-progressed images. Experts use facial analysis to show what the kids might look like now, in their 40s. Those new posters were sent to every hospital, DMV, shelter, and post office in the region. Agents even ran the names and faces through every missing persons and unidentified database in the country. Nothing. No matches. No records. No sightings. But the FBI had a new working theory. The kids had been raised in total captivity for years, maybe, until their mid-teens. And then something happened. Maybe they escaped. Maybe they were released. Maybe not all of them made it, but if any of them survived, they could still be out there. Living under fake names. Too afraid to come forward. Too traumatized to tell the truth. Or maybe, just maybe, they didn't. Even though they were part of a national case. Agents spread out across 4 states, following tips, looking at remote communities, religious compounds, survivalist enclaves. One agent said it best: "We're not hunting a killer right now. We're trying to find 5 lost children who never got to grow up." It happened on a quiet Wednesday morning. A woman in her mid-40s walked into a small sheriff's office in rural Oklahoma. She wore jeans, a sweatshirt, and a worn-out baseball cap. In her hand was a folded newspaper clipping, the photo from Hillshade, recently re-aired on the news. She placed it on the counter and whispered, "I need to talk to someone." A deputy brought her to a back room. She sat down slowly, her hand shaking. "My name is Melissa," she said, "but that's not the name I was born with." She pointed to the photo. Her finger landed on the girl in the middle, small, eyes wide, standing in front of the trailer. "That's me," she said. "They used to call me Megan." The room went quiet. The deputy asked, "Megan Reynolds? From Hillshade?" The woman nodded. "I remember the bikes. I remember the field. I remember everything." She started crying. I didn't think I'd ever say it out loud, but I saw that picture again and I couldn't stay quiet anymore. For 41 years, no one had heard a single word from any of the Texas 5 until now. And the truth she was about to tell would change everything. The sheriff's office took her seriously, but they had to verify. A nurse came in with a swab. They took a cheek sample, a fingerprint. They checked for scars the real Megan Reynolds had, one behind her ear from a childhood dog bite. The woman had. Then the DNA came back. It was a perfect match. Melissa really was Megan Reynolds. Missing since May 1983. Now standing in front of them, alive. The news hit like a shockwave. The FBI was notified. Agents flew in that same night. The press was kept away. Megan stayed hidden for her own safety. And because she wasn't ready to face the world just yet. One agent said later, "You could feel the room change." We all knew this wasn't just a lead anymore. This was one of the kids, one of the 5, and she was ready to talk. But no one was ready for what she would say next, because Megan didn't just remember everything. She had lived it, every single day. For years. Megan said it started like a normal day. They were near the woods, laughing, throwing rocks, looking for frogs. Then a man and woman appeared on the path. The man had a kind smile. The woman wore a long dress and carried a basket. They told us our parents sent them, Megan said. That we were special, chosen. At first, the kids didn't believe them, but then the woman used their names. All 5. She said, Tommy, Megan, Luis, Kyle. Your families don't want you anymore, but we do. They said our parents gave us away, Megan whispered. Said they were tired of us, that we were a burden. The man handed out juice boxes. Megan remembers Kyle taking one. Then Beth. Everyone was confused, scared, the two shocked to run. That's when the man opened the van door. He told them to get in. Tommy said no. He told us to go home. But the man's smile dropped. That's when he pulled the gun. Megan said, They got in. The van door slammed. And that was the last time we ever saw Hillshade. Megan said they drove for hours. None of them spoke. They were too afraid, too confused, and the world they were heading toward wasn't one they could ever imagine. Megan said the camp was deep in the woods. No signs, no fences, just a clearing with 2 trailers and a wooden shack. There was no name, no address, just rules. She said the man became Brother Randall. The woman was Mother Janet. From the first day, they were told not to ask questions. No talking during meals. No touching. No crying. They weren't allowed to use their real names. We were renamed after Bible people, Megan said. I was Ruth. Tommy was Daniel. We weren't us anymore. There was no school, no toys, no TV. Just chores, hauling water, chopping wood, cleaning. Hours of sermons where Randall shouted about obedience and sin. If they disobeyed, they were punished. Locked in a dark shed, denied food, made to kneel for hours. We learned to stop crying, Megan said. Crying made it worse. The days blended into months. Then years. One day, Kyle stopped talking. Completely silent, she said. He never said another word. Beth got sick. They begged for help. Randall told them, pray harder. That's all they could do. Pray. And hope someone someday would remember them. Megan said the days never really ended out there. Time didn't move like it did in the real world. It just dragged. The first to get sick was Kyle. He was always the smallest, quiet, gentle, always trying to make the others laugh. Then, one day, he just didn't get out of bed. He had a fever, Megan said. Then he started coughing. Bad. Couldn't breathe. They begged Randall to take him to a doctor. Randall just said, God gives life, and he takes it away. Kyle died 2 days later. Randall told the remaining 4 kids to dig a hole. We buried him behind the shack, Megan whispered. Wrapped in a sheet. No prayers. No goodbye. 2 years later, it happened again. Beth got sick. Something in her stomach. She couldn't eat. Couldn't drink. She cried every night for her mom. And then she stopped crying. She died in her sleep, Megan said. We buried her next to Kyle. No one spoke after that. Not for weeks. They were too numb. Too broken. We stopped talking because if we didn't talk, maybe we wouldn't feel anything. Megan looked down, and that's when we stopped being kids. It was a stormy night in 1989. The wind howled. Rain pounded the trailer roof. Lightning lit the sky like a strobe. Inside, Megan, Tommy, and Luis sat quietly. They didn't speak anymore. Hadn't for a long time. Just waited for whatever came. Next. Randall had been yelling all evening, pacing, muttering about the end of days. Janet was crying in the corner, rocking back and forth. holding an old Bible. Then, a crash. Megan said it sounded like thunder, but closer. A flash of light filled the trailer. Then heat. Flames. The stove had caught, or maybe a candle tipped over. They never found out. Within seconds, fire raced across the ceiling. Smoke filled the room. Megan remembers Randall screaming, Janet grabbing blankets, trying to smother the flames. But it was too fast. Too much. Tommy was the first to move. He yanked the door open and shouted, "Run!" Megan didn't think. She grabbed Lucy's arm, and the three of them sprinted into the night, barefoot. Rain soaking their clothes. No flashlights, no plan. Just fear. And finally, freedom. They didn't stop running. Behind them, the fire roared. Randall and Janet never came out. The kids didn't look back. They ran until the trees swallowed them whole. Megan said they wandered for days. Through woods, across empty roads, hiding whenever a car passed, afraid of everyone. Finally, outside a town in Oklahoma, they found a shelter. They walked in, soaked, shivering, starving. A woman came toward them with a blanket. She asked their names. Tommy said nothing. Louise stared at the floor. Megan lied. I told her my name was Melissa, she said. I made up a birthday. Said I didn't know my parents. I thought, if I told the truth, they'd send me back. She was placed in foster care, then moved again, and again. Eventually, she aged out of the system. Got a job. Found a tiny apartment. She never saw Tommy or Luis again. I don't know what happened to them, she whispered. We never talked about going separate ways. We just did. For years, she kept the lie. No one would have believed me anyway. She said, I was dirty, broken, and I didn't want to remember. She folded the newspaper clipping on the table in front of her. But I do now. I need to. Someone has to tell the truth. She looked up, tears in her eyes. It's time someone brought them home. Megan stood at the edge of the woods. It had been 35 years since she'd been here. The trees were taller now. The path was overgrown. But her feet remembered the way. She walked slowly, one step at a time. FBI agents followed close behind. Are you sure this is the place? One of them asked. Megan nodded. Her voice was low. Yes, I remember the bend in the trees. That rock, it was always damp here. They kept walking. Then, about 50 feet in, she stopped. Her eyes stared straight ahead. It was here, she said. The trailer was right here. She pointed to a spot between two thick trees. The agents looked around. To them, it was just dirt, grass, and fallen leaves. But to Megan, it was where her childhood ended. Her hands shook. Her breath got short. I slept right over there, she whispered. Luis and Kyle shared that side. Randall used to sit here. On this log, the agents marked the area. They didn't know if they'd find anything. So much time had passed. But they trusted Megan. She had lived it. She knew this place better than anyone. And now, it was time to dig. The next morning, agents brought in cadaver dogs. They were trained to find buried human remains, even after decades. Within minutes, one of the dogs stopped. Its nose went to the ground. It barked once, then again. It started digging. Another dog nearby did the same. The agents looked at each other. They pulled out ground-penetrating radar, a special tool that shows what's buried under the surface. The screen lit up with dark spots, uneven soil. Pockets in the earth. Right here, one agent said. Something's under here. They marked the locations and brought in a small digging crew. Slowly, carefully, they removed layers of dirt. At 18 inches down, someone said, "Stop." A torn piece of blanket appeared. More dirt was brushed away. Then something white. Bone. An arm. Then a rib. Then a small skull, wrapped in what looked like an old child's sheet. The forest had been quiet for years, but now it was speaking again, and what it had to say was heartbreaking. By the end of the second day, they have found 2 full skeletons. Both small. Both buried with care, but no marker. No names. Just shallow graves. One skeleton still had a necklace around its neck, rusted, but still shaped like a tiny rocket. Kyle's mom had once said he wore that necklace every day. The other had broken eyeglass frames next to the skull. Luis had terrible eyesight. The agents didn't want to jump to conclusions, but Megan stood back, watching, tears running down her face. "It's them," she said softly. "Kyle and Luis." The bones were sent to a lab. DNA results came back in 4 days. Confirmed. Kyle, Luis. They had been there all along. Buried just feet from where they had once played, eaten, prayed, and cried. The FBI notified both families. Kyle's mother collapsed. Luis's father didn't speak for hours. He just held his son's school photo in his hands and stared. There was grief. So much grief, but also a strange kind of peace. After 41 years, they weren't missing anymore. They've been found. And now, the agents knew this ground still held secrets. So they kept digging, because there were still questions left. And maybe someone else to find. While agents searched the ground, others chased down leads. One tip came from a former mail carrier in Idaho. She had seen a strange couple years ago, living in a van, then moving into a cabin. Said the man called himself Brother R. The woman wore long dresses. Never spoke. It sounded familiar. The name, the pattern, the silence. Agents traced the tip to a small cabin deep in the Montana wilderness. It was miles from any road. No power lines. No neighbors. They flew in by helicopter. The cabin was hidden by trees. Smoke drifted from the chimney. An agent knocked. No answer. He knocked again. Then the door opened. An old man stood there. Long beard, sunken eyes, thin. Behind him, a woman stood in the shadows. "Are you Randall Tate?" the agent asked. The man didn't reply, but the look in his eyes said enough. The cabin was cold inside. Dust floated in the air. Old tins lined the shelves. A Bible sat open on the table. But outside, behind the cabin, is where agents found what they weren't expecting. One of the cadaver dogs began barking again, this time near a fire pit, just past a cluster of pine trees. Agents brought in shovels and started to dig. The ground was soft, disturbed recently. Less than 4 feet down, they hit plastic. Thick black plastic, wrapped tightly. Inside, 2 bodies, one male, one female, both partially decomposed. The man's hands were folded across his chest. The woman was curled on her side. No wounds. No signs of violence. It looked like they had simply laid down and waited to die. One agent turned and said, "It's them. Randall and Janet Tate, the ones who had taken 5 kids, the ones who had disappeared for decades. Now, they were the ones buried in silence. A strange, quiet end for people who had caused so much pain. There were no gravestones. No crosses. Just 2 bodies in the cold dirt, surrounded by trees, and 41 years of secrets. Inside the cabin, the air was still. Agents moved carefully through each room. On a small desk near the back, they found notebooks. Stacks of them. Years of writing, sermons, drawings, paranoia. But one stood out. A leather-bound journal, thick with dust and tied shut with string. They opened it. Inside, a detailed timeline. Notes about obedience. References to God's will, the chosen 5, and something he called the trial of fire. Each child was mentioned by name, or rather, by the names he gave them. Daniel is strong. Ruth is stubborn. Kyle is weak. Beth is soft. Luis will break. On the final page, A single line stood out, handwritten in shaky pen. Only the quiet one survived. He will carry the truth. Underneath, just one word. Tommy. Agents froze. Tommy hadn't been found. He wasn't in the grave. He wasn't listed in any system. No DNA, no sightings, no trace. But Randall's words were clear. Tommy was out there somewhere, and if he had survived this long, he might be the only one who knew the full story. And maybe, just maybe, the truth hadn't died in those woods. After all, Megan still remembers the fire. She remembers the heat, the smoke, the way the flames lit up the trees like it was daytime. The rain poured hard, but not fast enough to stop what was happening. They were running. Tommy, Louise, and Megan, barefoot, soaked, terrified. Randall's voice was yelling behind them. Janet was screaming. But the kids didn't look back. Megan said they made it to the edge of the woods. Louise tripped, and Megan helped him up. She turned to call Tommy. That's when she saw him. He had stopped. Tommy looked back at the fire. Then deeper into the woods. Megan shouted, "Come on! This way!" But Tommy didn't answer. "He just ran," Megan said, "but not with us. The other way, like he knew where he was going." She said his face looked calm, focused, not afraid. Then he was gone. Into the trees, into the smoke. "I thought he'd meet us later," Megan said. "I waited. I kept looking. But Tommy never came back. That was the last time she saw him. The only person who had kept them all together. Vanished into the night. In 2024, after Megan went public, a shelter worker in Florida came forward. She had seen something. An old intake form from 1994, exactly 5 years after the fire. It was from a youth shelter near Jacksonville. The boy had come in late one night, said his name was Michael. No last name, no ID. He was around 22 years old. Thin, pale, quiet, barely spoke. The shelter let him stay one night. He ate a sandwich, took a shower, slept on a cot in the corner. The next morning, he was gone. No note, no goodbye. Just vanished. The only thing left behind? A photo. Every shelter takes one at intake, just in case. When Megan saw the photo, she gasped. "That's him," she said. "That's Tommy." He looked older, hollow, but the eyes were the same. Even the small scar above his eyebrow, the one he got from a bike crash at age 10, was visible. The FBI ran facial recognition. The match was over 90%, but no one ever found him again. The photo was all they had. A single night in a shelter. And then nothing. Like he stepped into the shadows and never came out. After the shelter photo surfaced, the theories exploded. Some believed Tommy had survived, changed his name, and disappeared into the system. Maybe he was too afraid to come forward. Maybe he didn't want to relive the past. Maybe he didn't even remember everything. Trauma can do that. The FBI searched missing persons files from the 1990s. They checked unidentified bodies, old hospital records, arrest logs. One body in Arizona matched his height and build. Another in Nevada had the same blood type, but none were Tommy. No fingerprints, no dental records, no DNA match. Another theory was darker. Some believed Tommy didn't survive long after the shelter, that he got sick, hurt, died alone, buried in an unmarked grave somewhere no one would ever look. Megan refuses to believe that. He survived. Randall, he survived the fire. Tommy was the strongest one of us. She still hopes he's out there, that maybe one day he'll see the news, or the photo, or hear her voice, and he'll come home, because the story isn't over until all 5 are found. In June 2024, a retired nurse in Oregon called the FBI. She had seen the shelter photo on TV, and her heart nearly stopped. "That boy," she said, lived in the apartment next to mine in 1997. She lived in a quiet town just outside Salem. The man never gave a last name, just said to call him Tom. He was quiet, polite, kept to himself, paid rent in cash. He worked nights at a gas station, rode an old bike, never had visitors, but he always looked haunted, like he was watching the door, the woman said, like he was waiting for something bad to happen. One night, she brought him leftover soup. He thanked her, said she reminded him of someone. That was the only time he smiled. 2 weeks later, he was gone. Left everything behind, a jacket, a book, an old photo of a lake. The woman kept the photo, showed it to agents. Behind the lake was a tree, and carved into that tree, barely visible in the photo's corner, were 5 letters: TMKLBTOMY. Megan, Kyle, Luis. Beth thought he hadn't forgotten. Even after decades, the search continues. The FBI has reopened every related file: old missing persons, unidentified bodies, shelters, hospitals, even psychiatric facilities. They review dental charts, DN, age progression sketches. They follow tips that go nowhere, check out sightings that end in dead ends. But they don't stop, because now they believe one of the Texas 5 is still out there, and his name is Tommy. One agent said, most cold cases lose steam after 5 years. This one's different. It won't let go. Tommy's shelter photo is posted in every law enforcement database across North America. They've recirculated it with an age progression. A hotline was created just for this case. People still call. Once a month, sometimes more. Some say they worked with him. Others swear they saw him at a bus stop in Colorado or sleeping under a bridge in Oregon. So far, no confirmed sightings. But agents say that's not the point anymore. They're not just looking for a body. They're looking for a life, a thread, a sign that after all this time, after all the pain, Tommy didn't just disappear. He endured, and he might still be trying to find his way back. For Megan, closure didn't come the way she imagined. Not in handcuffs, not in a courtroom, not even with all 5 of them standing together again. It came in pieces: a box beneath a tree, a photo in a shelter, 2 shallow graves in the woods. She visits the field sometimes, the one where their bikes were found. She stands quietly. No camera crews, no speeches, just silence. I still talk to them, she says. Sometimes I just stand there and say, we made it out. She carries guilt, the kind that doesn't fade. But she also carries something else now: purpose. She speaks to survivors of captivity. She helps train law enforcement on how to spot children who've been hidden. She even teaches foster parents how to spot trauma that doesn't look obvious. And she keeps a candle by her window every night. For Tommy, she says, maybe he's gone, maybe he's not. But if he's out there, I want him to know we didn't stop. We never stopped. Her voice shakes. I want him to know he wasn't the only one who survived. And in that, even without a full ending, she found something close to peace. On May 14th, 2024, exactly 41 years to the day the 5 kids disappeared, the town of Hillshade held a vigil. It started at sunset. Families gathered at the field, the same one where the bikes were found, where screen doors slammed shut behind excited kids. Where it all began, there were lanterns. One for each child. 5 lanterns in total. 1 floated for Kyle, 1 for Beth, 1 for Luis, 1 for Megan, still alive, 1 for Tommy. People held candles. Someone played quiet music. No speeches. Just names read aloud. Slowly, clearly. And when they read Tommy's name, the 5th lantern was released. It drifted higher than the others. A bell rang 5 times. Then silence. For years, This town didn't talk about what happened. It was too hard. Too heavy. But now, people talk. They say the kids' names. They tell their story. And in doing so, they break the silence that held the town hostage for 4 decades. One mother whispered, "We never forgot, not once." And even though Tommy was still missing, something had changed. After 41 years, they finally let the light rise. And Hillshade, for the first time, began to heal.